In this video, we're going to be talking all about slope. So your all about slope foldable should be glued at the top of page 6. So let's go ahead and talk about slope. So first, slope is the ratio of a line's vertical change. So remember, vertical is how much we go up and down to its horizontal change. And horizontal is how much we move from left to right. So you will always start off by finding your rise, your vertical change, and then your horizontal change. Slope is also considered the steepness of a line, and more words for slope or more phrases that can be substituted for slope are unit rate or rate of change. So, for example, here we have cost per hour and miles per hour. So this is always y per your x. So that's just in case you were curious. Now, in slope intercept form, your slope is the m, and we'll talk more about this in the video going over y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. In the y equals mx plus b formula. Now, there are multiple ways there's a couple ways you can find slope. One, you can use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or you can find your slope using rise over run. So with rise over run, if you move up, that means your change is positive. If you go down, that means your change is negative. Then you want to find your run. Now, if you go to the left, that means your change is negative, and if you go to the right, that means your change is positive. Now we have 4 types of slope. We have positive, negative, undefined, and zero. So here, a positive slope increases from left to right. So if you were to draw your stick figure on your graph, and you would see that it has to go up your graph to continue following it. A negative slope decreases from left to right. So if you draw your stick figure to move along your graph, it would have to go down. Now, in a zero slope is a horizontal line. So here we see that this line goes from left to right. This is horizontal. And then an undefined slope is a vertical line. So here that goes up and down. Now, off to the side somewhere on your STAAR review book, we're going to put this all together. We're going to piece it all together. So we're going to draw slope dude's face. And the first thing I want you to draw are his eyes. So he has a positive eye and a negative eye. So on his positive eye, his eyebrow arches upwards. And on his negative eye, his eyebrow arches downwards. Then let's talk about his nose. So when you look at your nose, the tip of your nose is in the shape of a U. That helps you remember a line going up and down is undefined. I'm going to put undef. Then your mouth is a straight line moving from left to right, and some people have dimples attached. So, or you can consider these slope dude's cheeks. They are circles for zeros. So this is slope dude, and if you're ready, let's go ahead and look at number 1. So for number 1, it says we're finding a slope from a graph. So here it says a linear function is graphed below. What is the slope of the graph line? So when you're finding the slope of a graph, first you need to choose 2 pretty points. Now you know what 2 pretty points are because they should be in the middle of 4 squares. So for example, this would be a pretty point because it's in the middle of 4 squares on the line. After we have identified our 2 pretty points, we're going to count the rise and then the run between the 2 points. And then we're going to set up a ratio of the rise over run, and then we will simplify. So we have already identified our first pretty point, so we need to identify a second pretty point. So the second pretty point I see is going to be at 1, -3. Now that we have identified our 2 pretty points, now you need to determine your starting position. You can either start off at the point furthest to the left or furthest to the right. It is completely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and start at this point. So this is where I'm starting, and I'm trying to make my way to this point. So first, I need to determine my rise. So again, that's how much I'm moving up or down. So here I see I have to move down 1, 2, 3, 4 4 units. Then I have to go right by 1, 2, 3 units. So here I went down 4 and right 3. So if I went down 4, remember if you move down, that is a negative change. So that's negative 4 over my run, which is since I went right 3, that's going to be positive 3. So then you want to put this in your calculator to make sure that your fraction is as simplified as it gets. So when I put negative 4 over 3, I'm going to do control divide. Negative 4 on top and 3 on the bottom. When I press enter, it returns back to me negative 4 over 3. So this lets me know that this is as simplified as it gets. Here, my slope is negative 4 over 3. So that was finding slope from a graph, again using rise over run. Now we're going to talk about finding slope from a table using the slope formula. So for number 2, it says a web designer charges customers an initial consultation fee plus an hourly rate. The table shows the linear relationship between X, the number of hours, and Y, the total cost of hiring the designer. We are going to choose 2 ordered pairs from the table and use the slope formula to find the rate of change. So here the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And here it says if a linear relationship contains 2 ordered pairs, your ordered pairs should be x1, y1 and x2, y2. We can use this formula to find our slope. So here that I have a table, I have 4 points. In order to do the slope formula, or in order to use it, we only need 2 pretty points. So the 2 points I'm going to choose to use are 5 and 400 and 10 and 725. But again, you can choose to use any of the 2 you want. So I'm not going to use 2 and 8. So this is my X column and this is my Y column. So if I were to pull these ordered pairs out, this is 5 and 400. And then this ordered pair is 10 and 725. So remember here in the definition of slope formula, it said your first coordinate was going to be x1, y1. So I'm going to label 5 as x1, 400 as y1. And then my second ordered pair is going to be x2, y2. Because remember, every ordered pair has an x and y value. So now we're going to substitute this information into our formula. Now, if you're given a table and you don't want to necessarily pull the points out, since this is your x column, this is x1, y1, this is x2, y2. So for y2 here, I have 725 minus y1, which is 400, over x2, which is 10, minus x1, which is 5. So we're going to go ahead and open up our calculator, and the first thing you're going to do is press Control Divide. Then we're going to put 725 minus 400 on the top and 10 minus 5 on the bottom. When we press Enter, we see that it returns back to us 65. So here our slope is 65. So that is finding slope from a table, or sometimes they might present it to you as just 2 ordered pairs. So now let's go ahead and move on to number 3. So for number 3, it says McKenna has a gift card to Movies Inc. The graph shows the amount of money remaining on her gift card based on the number of movies she has seen. Which statement best describes the situation? So since I'm trying to find the slope of a graph here, we're going to use rise over run. We're going to use the rise over run method. So I need to determine 2 pretty points. I see a pretty point at my y-intercept, which is 50, and I see another pretty point at 2 and 35. So we can start at whatever position we want. I'm going to go ahead and start here just so you see a different representation of it. So if I'm starting at this point, to get to my next point, I'm going up 3. But if you pay attention to your increments, they're not going up by 1s. They're going up by 5s. So this is 5, 10, 15. I went up 15. So my rise is a positive 15. Over my run, now I'm going left 2. And if I look at my x-axis, they are going by 1s. So I went left 2. And if I went left 2, that is a negative 2. Now, when I simplify 15 over negative 2 in my calculator, because if you look at your answer choices, it is in decimal form. So converting this into a decimal, whoops, I forgot to put the decimal point. So control divide, negative 15 on the top, 2 on the bottom. With the decimal point, we get negative 7.5. So looking at our answer choices and keeping in mind what our slope is, let's go ahead and see which statement best represents our slope. So for A, it says the gift card balance decreased by $7.50 for every movie watched. This statement is true, and A is our answer. If this had said increased, however, I want you to think, would it still be true? Now, if it said increased, that means your slope would be positive. And since our slope is negative, it has to say decreased. So again, A is our answer for number 3. Let's go ahead and look at number 4. So for number 4, it says Anna can decorate 3 cakes in 5 hours. Which graph has a slope that best represents the number of cakes per hour? This should say Anna can decorate. So, looking here, 3 cakes in 5 hours. With these types of questions, all you have to do is look at the graph and basically look for that point. And now, every single ordered pair is written with an X and then a Y. So, I have to determine which one's my X and which one's my Y, the 3 cakes or the 5 hours. And I can determine this by looking at the labels on my graph. Hours is my X variable, so 5 will be my X, and cakes is my Y variable, so 3 will be my Y. So now I'm going to look for the ordered pair 5, 3. So looking at number 4, I'm going to, when X is 5, Y is 3, and I see that A passes through that point, so A is my answer. Now just to keep showing you, if you look at B, when you go to an X is 5 and Y is 3, it does not go through that point. For C, when I go to an X is 5 and Y is 3, again, it does not go through that point. And for D, when I go to an X is 5 and Y is 3, it does not go through that point. So again, for number 4, A is your answer. Okay, looking at number 5, it says triangle ABC and triangle DEF are similar right triangles. Which of these proportions demonstrates that the slope of line AC is equal to the slope of line DEF? So the first thing we need to do is find our slope of one of our triangles. Now here I have 2 similar right triangles and they are on the same line. Now remember, when you have the slopes of 2 right triangles sharing the same line, they have equal slopes. So that means I do not have to find the slope of both graphs, only one. So I'm going to go ahead and find the slope of my smaller graph, or my smaller triangle. So that's going from point D to point F. And I can start off at whatever point I want. I'm going to go ahead and start off going at D, and I'm going to follow my triangle. So starting off at D, I first need to determine my rise. Am I going up or down to get to F? I'm going down by 1, 2, 3. And since I went down 3, my rise is a negative 3. Then for my run, I went 1, 2 to the left. And since I went 2 to the left, that means it's a negative 2. So now I simplify in my calculator. Control divide. Negative 3 on top and negative 2 on the bottom. When we press enter, we see that our slope is 3 over 2. So now we're going to go and check our proportions to see which one has the correct proportion. So looking at A, what we want to do is put one side of the equal sign into our calculator. If it returns back to us as our slope, then we will check the other side. So let's go ahead and check out A. So first thing I'm going to do is press Control Divide. On the top, I have negative 1 minus 2. On the bottom, I have 2 minus 0. When I press Enter, we see that our slope is negative 3 over 2. Now, since our slope is 3 over 2, negative 3 over 2 and a positive 3 over 2 are not the same. So A cannot be our answer. Now let's look at B. By the way, since this side did not equal our slope, we no longer have to check this side. So now looking at B, I'm going to press Control Divide, 0 minus 2 on the top. and -1 minus 2 on the bottom. When we press enter, it returns back to us 2 over 3. And since it returns back to us 2 over 3, 2 over 3 is not the same thing as 3 over 2, and you can cross B out. Now let's go ahead and look at C. So looking at C, control divide to begin with. And on the top, we have -1 minus 2. And on the bottom, 0 minus 2. When we press enter, it returns back to us 3 over 2. So since this side of our equal sign equals our slope, now we're going to go ahead and check the other side. So to check the other side, again, control divide. We have -4 minus 5 on the top, and then we have -2 minus 4 on the bottom. And when we press enter, we see that our slope again is also 3 over 2 here. So since both sides of this proportion equal our slope, C is our answer. Now let's go ahead and take a look at number 6. So for number 6, it says triangle ZAB and XYZ are similar right triangles. Which of these proportions can be used so the slope of line XZ is equal to line, this should say BZ. So here with alphabetical proportions, whenever you're looking at slope of similar right triangles, you are looking for the proportion that says rise over run equals rise over run. So let's go ahead and look at A. Now remember, a rise is you going up and down, and a run is you going from left to right. So we're going to look at each line segment. So I'm looking at the line segment for YZ. I see the line segment for YZ goes from left to right, so this is a run. And since my proportion needs to be rise over run, and I already have run on top, A cannot be my answer. Now let's go ahead and look at B. For B, I have XY. XY goes up and down, so this is a rise. YZ goes from left to right, so this is a run. AB goes from left to right, so this is a run. And again, the proportion has to be rise over run equals rise over run, so B is not my answer. If we keep going, let's go ahead and look at C. For XY, this is a rise. It goes up and down. Looking at YZ, YZ is a run. AZ, line segment AZ is a rise. And line segment AB is a run. So here I see that I have the proportion rise over run equals rise over run. So here C is my answer. Now, looking at D, we could have automatically crossed D out because if you see here, they are mixing up the line segments and the triangles. XY belongs to a smaller triangle, and AZ is the line segment for a larger triangle. And we should not be mixing together a small triangle and a large triangle. So it should be the smaller triangle equals the larger triangle. So that concludes all about slope.